Yo, what's up you guys? My name is Brennan with Trail4Runner.com, and today we're going to get the power brakes installed on the 5th Gen 4Runner. They also make these for the Tacoma. This is a big brake kit upgrade with a 6-piston caliper and steel drums. This is an incredibly stout kit that's going to allow for more heat dissipation and just much better braking all the way around. So real quick, I just wanted to go over Powerbrake, who they are, and an overview on the kit. So Powerbrake, if you have not heard of them, is definitely a company you want to check out. They're from South Africa, and they outfit a ton of the Dakar Race Rally trucks with their big brake kit. So, not all the Dakar race trucks are getting this exact kit right here, obviously, but they do outfit a lot of the Dakar Race Rally trucks with their big brake kit. And if you have not heard of that event, that's like the equivalent to our Ultra 4 racers out here. So, if you have not heard of the Dakar Race Rally, go check that out. And that's kind of like where Powerbrake gets their background. These things are designed for race trucks in the most like intense race in South Africa, dude, where it's like incredibly hot. And heat dissipation is incredibly important. So Powerbrake is literally race tested and proven. These brake calipers are probably, I would argue, one of the best brake upgrades you can do for your 4Runner or your Tacoma. There's other big brake kits out there, but I think after you guys kind of see the overall review, the actual product, what it's all about, the install process, I'm sure you guys are going to agree that this is definitely a pretty impressive kit. So without any more, let's just kind of jump into what the product is. It's a machined billet aluminum 6-piston brake caliper. It's got red anodizing, laser etching, a protective housing for the brake hoses, so when you're cooking 100 miles an hour down a dirt road, rocks are flying everywhere. Those rocks are going to hit this instead of where your brake hose is actually connecting in there. It's got a heat dissipation and heat monitoring system directly built into the actual caliper. So if you need to know how hot your pads are running, this will tell you exactly how hot your pads are running. Wow, this is amazing. Also, they have a recessed brake bleeder valve right there, stainless steel hardware, and that's it for the brake calipers. Here's a look at the kit in a little more detail. You have those brake calipers that I was just showing you a second ago, and then you have the rotors. Now the rotors are really cool because just like the calipers, they have temperature markings built into the actual rotor themselves. These temperature markings right here work in conjunction with the temperature reading on the calipers to give you as much information as it can give you to make an educated decision on what pads you should be running for how hot you are getting your braking system. So really, really cool kit that Powerbrake has put together here. Then you also have directional slots inside the actual rotor, and those directional slots are pulling in as much outside air to cool down the actual rotor itself. Secondary to that, you have directional slots on the outside, and they call that an all-terrain slot. Now that all-terrain slot is designed to dispense or disperse any sand or any unwanted debris that's coming into your braking system as well. And this is a high-carbon cast steel rotor that's finished in Powerbrake's proprietary black coating finish. Really, really good-looking rotors right here. Then the rest of the kit's pretty simple. We have brackets that are going to mount to the hub, and then our calipers are going to mount to those brackets. These are the pads that are shipped with the calipers, and we are going to put on a set of race pads. So this is the next step up here for our system. We're going to take out the supplied pads, and we're going to put a set of race pads on. So we're really excited to see what those do. And then the rest of the kit's pretty simple. You have brake lines that they supply you, and then remaining hardware down there.
Before you get started, you want to make sure you have a clean workstation. Set down some cardboard, and then on top of the cardboard, set down a drain pan on top of that cardboard so that the brake fluid drips into the drain pan, and just in case it drips over the drain pan, it can catch on the cardboard and it doesn't stain your garage floors. All right, the first thing we're going to do is take off these two clips right here and right here. Let's disconnect this brake line from the soft line right here. Powerbrake gives you a supplied rubber stopper. So once we take off the soft line from the hard line, we're gonna put that stopper on the hard line to stop the brake fluid from coming out of the hard line. So I'm gonna take just a crescent. And a 10 millimeter brake line wrench and crack it open. And you got to work kind of fast. Once the brake fluid starts to come out, I can see it coming out right now. Then you can just loosen it the rest of the way by hand. There you go. Now we're gonna repeat that process on this bracket right here. Same thing, crescent and a 10 mil brake line wrench. If you're running wheel spacers, you definitely want to remove those before, at least crack the nuts on those before you remove your calipers. So, as you would when you install them, put a screwdriver in between rotor up there. And then once your wheel spacers are off, then you can take your calipers off. All right, you got two 19 millimeters. You got one right there and one right there. So I'm just gonna push this hard line out a little bit. And I have a deep socket for the top. Woo! That's hot. And then we'll crack this lower guy too. Save these. And then while you loosen the top 19 millimeter, hold the bottom of your brake caliper so it doesn't fall off. You should be able to just wiggle your caliper out. And since we want everything to go back on the new rotors super clean, we're gonna clean up our wheel spacers with some parts cleaner, parts degreaser, and some brake parts cleaner. So I'll leave links in the description for all this stuff, but we're gonna soak not necessarily gonna soak it, but we're gonna clean the wheel spacers the best we can. We're gonna get in there with a wire brush and clean everything off and then soak the nuts. We're gonna clean the studs. We had some Loctite on the studs, so we definitely wanna clean those studs off and just clean everything we can. We want the back side of this wheel spacer to go on that rotor as perfect as possible. To pull our rotors off, we're just going to use a rubber mallet and knock on the back side of the rotors. Be careful not to twist the rotor and catch your finger, thumb, whatever on the dust shield, because that will hurt. Ask me how I know. Right after I pull off the rotor, I'm gonna hit the hub with some PB Blaster just to knock away any of the rust that's been sitting on those studs in the backside of the hub. I'm gonna let that sit there for a second. Then I'm gonna come back and clean the hubs with a wire brush all the way around. I'm gonna come back and clean the studs with a wire brush with a coarse brush first, then a fine brush. See, you got some Loctite remnants all the way around here. You want to get all that crap off. You also want to clean your hub so that it's clean. You don't want anything. And we got a lot on it. So we need to clean the living daylights out of the hub. Like coarse brush, medium brush, fine brush, studs, the hub, everything. Anything that the rotor is going to mount to. So the surface right here, all around the stud, we want to clean that really good. All right, while we're letting that PB Blaster and brake cleaner sit on the hub, we are going to trim our dust shield. So you can do this a couple ways. You can do it with a set of tin snips, which is what I'm going to use, or you can use a grinder or a Dremel, the little cutoff disc, whatever you want, whatever you're most comfortable with. All right, so I cut off the majority of it with the grinder. So I'm going to come back through with the tin snips and clean a perfect circle all the way around the hub. All right, let's clean the actual hubs. After you work the hubs with these large coarse brushes, then you can come back through and start hitting in between the studs with these smaller brushes. You're going to want to scrub using your most coarse brush first in between all of the studs. And the OD, the outside diameter of this brush right here, is a little too big to fit all the way in between the studs. So what I did with the last one, I was using this one, is I just put it in the vise and smashed these plastics on the backside together so they can fit in between the stud and this hub right here. So you can scrub this pocket right here. That's really where you want to clean the most, is like right in that pocket where everything builds up. The big ones are good for getting the outside, outside on top of the studs and outside on the hub, all the way around. But these little guys is really what you want to use to get in between. And you just want to take your time. It's going to take time. You're going to be here for a good 20 minutes. All the way around. Making sure this is as clean as can possibly be. Keep cleaning. When you think it's clean, keep cleaning. And when you're really 100% sure it's clean, make another couple passes. You want these clean. I've been cleaning it for a solid 20 minutes. And it's getting closer, but you can see there's still some kind of built up grime on this top portion of the hub ring. And I still have a little bit to go. So I'm going to come back through and kind of alternate these brushes, these coarse brushes in here. Just keep hitting it with some brake cleaner. And just keep cleaning until all you see is silver. You don't want to see any brown rust or buildup anywhere. We want those rotors to seat perfectly on these hubs. After you clean your hubs, just go ahead and inspect it one more time. Spin it around and make sure you're checking this groove right here and the actual wall of the hub as well. Just go through and make sure it's as clean as you can possibly get it before you install your rotors. I could probably even spend another 20 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes on this hub and just go crazy on this surface up top. But I mean, it's about as clean as I feel like I can get it with scrubbing it with a brush. There's your new pretty rotors. And we have spacers. So we're going to put our spacers directly on here. So you always want to tighten your wheel spacers or rotor or anything that's going onto a hub in a star pattern. Before we install our calipers, we're going to spin the rotor and look straight down over the top of the rotor and make sure, one, the rotor is spinning as straight as possible to the eye. That means it's not crooked on the hub. You're just giving it like a quick glance just to make sure it's spinning straight. If not, it's not seated on the hub properly. And then second, you want to make sure that there's no interference with the dust shield, the brake dust shield. So if there is any interference, you're going to have to take the rotor back off and you're going to have to cut that brake shield back as much as possible. Before we mount the actual calipers onto the rotors in the hub, we need to slot these M12 bolts through the caliper and into the bracket that Powerbrake provides. So you can hand thread it in just to get it started, and then come back with a 10, metric 10. And then we're gonna torque these later. So just get them snug right now. All right, now let's install these calipers directly onto the hub using our factory Toyota hardware. And just separate your pads there, slide that directly over, and position that in place. And then slide your 19 millimeter bolts back into the backside of the hub. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Look at how clean that is. Those look good. All right, this is the extended brake line that Powerbrake supplies you in your kit. And this is going to connect up to that hard line. And then this is going to connect directly to the brake calipers as the banjo fitting. And that's going to go on the back side of the caliper. And then this bolt is going to go into the brake caliper. But you see that hole there? That hole needs to line up, obviously, with the brake line so that the fluid comes in through the brake line and then into the calipers. So we're going to mark these. The face of the bolt actually is not perfectly centered with that hole, so I'm going to mark both of those sides just so I know that, perfectly straight would be something like right there, not completely flat on the face of the bolt. I want to know exactly where that lines up with that brake line when I put it on. And there's a torque spec too, which I believe is 15 foot-pounds. So you got to get that exactly right. All right, now we're going to feed in our brake line with the banjo fitting down, and we want to feed that banjo fitting through the first bracket, and then we're going to take our bolt with the hole in it to feed that fluid through, and you want to make sure you have the bolt, washer, banjo, and then you want to slide another another washer on top of that banjo. And this is a 13 millimeter fitting, so we're going to line this up. Give this some momentum to push itself down, and then we're going to hand thread that in there. And we're going to take our 13 millimeter, and we're going to tighten this down. It is right in line. Perfect. Okay, now very quickly we are going to pull the cap off of the hard line that was stopping that brake fluid from coming down, and we're going to put our hard line into this new soft line. And I can just hand thread that in there for now, and then take our brake line wrench, 10 millimeter brake line nut wrench, and start torquing it down. Now you can put in your brake line clips, and you can wiggle those in there with some pliers. There you go, like that. And then repeat that process for this one up here. All right, guys, we're gonna bleed the brakes here, and Powerbrake gives us a brake bleeder tool right there that flows up and over this line that allows us to fit it over the fitting here to open and close the fitting while we have a tube connected. So it's a really cool tool. So all you need is obviously this setup here, pretty simple, and then crack the bleeder valve, and that's gonna bleed a line. So we're gonna start with the outboard bleeder valve, then we're gonna move to the inboard bleeder valve, and then once we crack them open, we're gonna push on the brake pedal 3 times, and then push some pressure through the braking system out into this bottle, pulling fluid from the master cylinder in through the calipers and then out in through the bottle until we see no air bubbles. And then I have a shop towel over the rotors because you don't want to spill any brake fluid on the rotors. That's going to decrease the performance overall of your brake pads. And then as I'm bleeding the brakes, I'm refilling the master cylinder with DOT4 brake fluid. All right, we started with the outboard bleeder valve, and now we are moving into the inner bleeder valve. We cracked that open. This is our second time bleeding both of the valves. So this will be the last valve that I open and bleed, and then I will close this up and I will clean everything. All right, we're finished with bleeding the brake system. Again, we started with the outboard, went to the inboard, then we went back to the outboard, and then the inboard again. And now we're going to go over to the driver's side, and we're going to repeat that process on the driver's side. So outboard, inboard, then close valves, outboard, inboard, then close the valve. And then make sure that you cover your rotors because this is definitely going to protect you from dripping a bunch of brake fluid all over your rotors, which you don't want. And then the last thing ultimately that you need to do is come back in here with a shop towel and clean everything inside and behind these bleeder valves. And then clean your calipers as well. To make sure that you've bled your brakes properly, you want to give your calipers a little wiggle and see if there's any play in there. If there is no play in the calipers against the actual brake pads, then you should be good. That means your pads are tight on your rotors and that there is no play. The pistons have come out and they're pushing the pads into the rotor, and you're good. And last but not least, you want to make sure you come back and put your little rubber stoppers on the outboard bleeder valve and the inboard bleeder valve. For torquing down the banjo and the wheel spacers, we're going to use our gear wrench torque wrenches, and these things are pretty awesome. If you haven't seen these, definitely check them out. I have the smaller torque wrench set to 15 foot-pounds with a 13.
Nice.
And for our wheel spacers, we're going to torque those Spider Track spacers down to 80.
And just make sure you have your screwdriver set in between your caliper and your rotor. And just like always, we are going to torque this down in a star pattern.
Then for those 19 millimeter bolts on the back end, we're going to tighten those down to 91 foot-pounds.
Might already be there. Nope.
These get a 77 foot-pounds. Actually, a lot more than I thought. 70. 76.
All right, guys, that was it. This is the Powerbrake big brake kit for the 5th Gen 4Runner, and that was the full install. Super simple, super straightforward. Powerbrake makes big brake kits for the 5th Gen 4Runner and the Tacoma as well. So if you're looking for a big brake kit for your 5th Gen 4Runner, this is an absolutely stunning product, and I was blown away by everything that this product provided. Everything from opening it out of the boxes to installing it to just looking at it right now. It's a very, very impressive product. The machined billet aluminum calipers are super lightweight. The 6-piston calipers are going to provide more performance, stronger performance, and better heat dissipation over the cast calipers that are running from the factory. So overall, the whole system, super impressive, blown away by just the design and engineering, over-engineering that went into this product. I mean, it's the kind of product that you pull out of the box and it kind of brings a tear to your eye. It's like that. I know a lot of you are probably going like, bro, this kid is crazy. But it really is like that. It's a product that you hold and go, wow. Wow. So, pretty impressive product. I'm happy with it right now. I obviously haven't test driven it, but by the looks of it, by the other reviews on the internet, and just by just the word on Instagram and the word on all of the streets, everybody is beyond blown away with the actual results that this kit provides as well. So the heat temperature monitoring system is pretty cool. I don't know how much we're going to use that, but it's cool knowing that heat temperature monitoring system is there just in case we do need to have the feedback from our braking system to know, what pads we should be running for our current setup. Depending on how much weight you have on your 4Runner, you might want the higher end pads like we have here. So, overall, yeah, really nice kit. And maintenance moving forward, we're just going to pull the tires off in about a week of daily driving this, or about 100 miles, and we're going to bleed the system again. There's little microscopic bubbles that are running through that braking system somewhere. So you want to spend another 100 miles or about a week of time kind of putting pressure on that braking system to keep bleeding the lines to get all those microscopic bubbles out of the lines. So it's almost impossible to get all those bubbles out on the initial bleed, which is why they have you bleed both valves twice on both sides. So we want to continue to bleed the lines before we put it to work, right? So we want to fully bleed that system before we really go put this thing to work on the trails, to really give the Powerbrake big brake kit the most performance that it's going to give us, and the best pedal feel on the braking system as well, the best response on that braking system. So I'm super stoked with the way it turned out as of now, so we'll see how it acts later on the trails and, just daily driving and stuff. So if you guys have any questions for me, leave them in the comments section below. I'll obviously leave links to everything, the kit, the tools I used, and a link over to Trail 4Runner as well. if you want to go see every single high-res photo of this brake kit installed, you can go to trail4runner.com and see all of those photos documented, high-res, in detail, and a description for each photo. So if you guys have any questions, again, let me know in the comments, and I hope you like the install. I'm super happy with it, so we'll see how it acts out on the trails, and we'll see you guys out on the trails. Have a good one. Peace.